Are you good? You all right?
Yeah, I'm cool.
You sure?
Yeah. Are you good?
Well, I'm saying, did you go up? I didn't know if it went up.
Than us, like, because we're all like.
I know. I'm trying to like keep it together. I'm trying to get in.
We gave him the short chair. He's like,
I got the short
from
chair.
now on, that's how we could tower over at people.
Are you
make
guys
them feel
trying to pull a
uncomfortable.
power move, dude? I just got here.
That's our power move.
You're trying to pull a power
We
move.
give him in
I
the
don't
short
think you
chair.
realize who's sitting on the other side of the table from you.
No, we don't. This is going to get real right now, Tori.
Let's go, Godfather.
I'm excited.
Welcome to Are We Where Yet with Johnny Awesome and Tori Black.
All right. Welcome to the, I want to say episode 3. It sounds better. It sounds like Star Wars, right? Welcome to episode 3 of the Are We Where Yet podcast.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Right. I am your host, Obi John Kenobi. And we co-host here, we got Tori Black.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hello, guys.
Hello. And before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping real quick. Back to the first episode where we kind of introduced ourselves and we were talking about, you know, where we were and where we're at now. I just want to say that, you know, I'm still struggling with the ego, Tori. I don't know if you know that or not, but...
No.
Okay,
no, you
good.
haven't discussed this with me.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better. But... So I just wanted to say a lot of those things that I mentioned in there, they were ideas of mine, like the open aired and, you know, the record label, things like that. But it always took 2 to make it happen, like birthing a baby into this world. It was, so I just want to give a shout out to everybody that helped make open aired happen, like Mike Titan, Charles Escalante, Fausto Lopez, who is Legal Alien, and last but not least, Citizen AIM, Christopher John Walk. He was, rest in peace. He was a big part of that. So, you know, I was just talking and I forgot to mention them. So I just want to give, you know, credit where credit is due, and they're a big part of that. So
Right on.
there's the housekeeping. All right. So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to introduce our guest on the other side of the mic here, Justin Reau, right? Reau?
Reau.
But it's spelled, how's it spelled?
Reau.
Is that French?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Means king.
It means king?
Yeah.
That's even cooler.
Yeah. My brother's middle name is King too.
Really?
Yeah, his middle name's Rex.
So that's king? Rex means king?
Yeah, like T-Rex.
Oh, okay. Well,
My mom's like raising kings, I guess. I don't know.
That's cool, man. So, you know, Justin, just to give a little history here, we both go to the same church.
Yes,
and
sir.
I feel funny calling it a church. I don't know about you, but to me, it's like, but it's church. It's church.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's cool.
You know, we go to the same church, and I've been talking about getting him on the podcast. And I wouldn't say he's hesitant, but cautiously aware.
I just like to slow play.
Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, let's just take it easy. Let's just have fun. Good podcast, right?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. So let me start off with a few questions. Was 9/11 an inside job? Did we
Yes.
go to the moon? And is Tupac still alive?
Are we talking conspiracies?
Go.
Follow the money. I'm not sure about the moon landing. Like, I've heard it could go either way. I don't really have a big, issue with it. I'm cool. And then, what was the last one?
Tupac. Is he alive? Please tell me he is.
I don't think Tupac's alive.
Oh, man.
I'm more of a Biggie fan anyway. Even though I'm a West Coast kid. I'm a West Coast kid, but I'm down for Biggie.
Oh, yeah. No, I love Biggie, too.
I love Tupac.
Okay, jokes out of the way. So, Justin, I got your bio.
Yes, sir.
And I didn't even know. We've known each other for some time. You actually came in at the end of Open Aired.
Yeah. I met you right, I want to say maybe a few months before Citizen AIM passed away.
Okay.
Yeah, like you guys were still doing graph work. Like you would have big plywood
In the back.
in the back, and there'd be like a bonfire, and then you guys would graph,
Yeah.
do graffiti on the boards and stuff like that. And that's when I met him. He was rocking the big old mask.
Oh
and
yeah, he had to
stuff.
wear we had the respirator on because of the fumes
Yeah.
from the smoke and from the paint would get with his lungs. You know, he had the
Yeah.
cystic fibrosis. That's what he passed away from. So,
Yeah, so I
but
met.
he still wanted to be there. So that's what he went. He went
Yeah,
out
I mean,
on-
it was pretty dope, like going and seeing like your guys' hardcore scene, and because I had just come from the Bay Area, so it was kind of like it just got real, like as soon as I got to Yuma. So I thought that was pretty dope.
Oh, so you're not from the Bay Area though, right?
No, I was raised in New Mexico. I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
That's where I went to like elementary, junior high, high school.
Okay.
And then when I was 19, I went to Hawaii, and I lived in Hawaii for 5 years, and worked with kids.
Perfect for the podcast, like are we where yet? Because you've already mentioned a few different places,
Yeah,
Right.
I kind of had a few journeys.
a few journeys,
Yeah.
and so when I was looking at your bio, I noticed there's some pretty credible things on there on your bio. One
Okay.
was MTV. You did something with MTV. Let's just get straight into that.
Well, I was privileged to. There's a couple that are mentors of mine, Rich and Yvonne Dutra, St. John, and they're in East Bay in the Bay Area, and they have an organization called Challenge Day, and these two are like kind of crazy genius level, like they're on another thing, and so when I was younger, I had gotten out of school. I moved to Hawaii. I was working with kids. We kind of get into that a little bit. And but when I was, it was a YMCA camp, right? So
Okay.
I kind of went there. A friend of mine that I grew up with had moved to Hawaii, and she was living on the North Shore. And I was like, "What's good?" Like,
So like what? You got a spare room that I can
kind of
crash
on
in?
that level,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, I was like, "What's up?" And she was like, "Well, see, so let's back up. So I grew up going to a church organization that I think you were part of.
Yeah.
On another side, right? Like the
A
heavy
few
hitters.
states over, yeah.
Yeah, and like the heavy hitters from where you were like best homies with the heavy hitters from where I was, and we were all kind of underneath the umbrella of this big.
Organization.
Yeah,
Called the Fellowship.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the height of the fellowship, they're real into like old school evangelizing and like kind of more traditional American Christianity, where you're trying to like get people to pray with you and
Converts.
and increase the number of people at your church, and it's cool.
And
like,
that shows
for those
success, right? That's like the success rate, like how many people you have saved in your church. Fill out a card.
people. Yeah, I kind of have a hard time saying it with that tone a little bit, just because even if there's like a lot of success driven stuff that they're kind of focusing from, it's like everybody's kind of where they're at, you know what I mean? And like you gotta leave room for people's process, right? And you gotta leave room for people's process, even if they're at a stage of their process where they're not gonna leave room for yours.
You got too deep for us already. That's it. That's the end of the podcast. But
You know
no,
what I'm saying?
no,
No,
I know
you know
what
what I mean? Like not everybody knows how to let you have some room, right? So if you're sitting with someone and you're in a two-way conversation, and you're the only one in that conversation who knows how to leave room, who's going to leave the room then?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's going to make some space, right? And maybe if I make a little space for you, hopefully one day you'll realize, like, you know what? Like, there's that one person I always talk to that seems to always leave space for me. Maybe I don't even know how to say it like that. I just know that when I'm with you, I feel like I have a little bit of space. Maybe it's a little safer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of because a lot of people that come through that church, that style of church world, end up having like a journey, and so many people have that similar journey. Maybe the details are different, but it's real consistent with like, if you find yourself kind of leaving that world, you might have some anger going on. You might feel a little jaded. You might feel a little like,
Yeah, because it's the world he's talking about, a very controlling world where the pastor is the head of the church and he calls the shots from there down. And like, if you want to go take vacation, you go say, "Hey, pastor, can I go take vacation?" It's been like crazy stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was talking to somebody that was previous. It went to the same church, and she called it like post-traumatic church syndrome or something. She had like this whole district
like a PTSD kind of.
Yeah, like a PTSD, and she was very angry.
Yeah.
She's very angry at it. So I see your reverence towards it. Like it was like the school you had to go through to develop who you are today.
I mean, when you get to high school, I mean, I know it's kind of cool to like, the freshmen are like the losers, and then the sophomores are less loser, and then suddenly when you hit junior,
Yeah.
you're like on another level, right? No, you're just a junior in high school, right? Like, so you got to go through each kind of stage and to kind of knock the one before it actually locks you out of getting to the next level. So I try and like be gracious about, because I don't know what level am I at right now. You know what I mean? I'm too busy in here. So I don't know what my blind spots are. I don't know if my butt's hanging out and my pants are down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so maybe if I could pull your pants up when you don't realize and I could be cool with you, then you'll do the same for
Then
me.
that leaves room for you.
Yeah.
So I got you. So that's why you won't speak to it with that kind of a.
And I'm down to like, yo, we'll talk about religion all day long.
Yeah.
I just try and be a little. I didn't always used to be that way. I used to be like a real forward person, and just kind of like bull in a china shop. So, and I still have moments like that, I think. But yeah, I just try and slow my roll a little bit.
Okay. So then that church you're talking about, that's what. Very controlling. We'll just give a little backdrop.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
It's very
like,
controlling,
yeah,
and evangelistic, and you know, Western Christianity to the max.
Yeah.
And, so anyway, so that was your catapult into Hawaii. That was like, I got to get away from here.
yeah. Okay, so I can give you kind of like a bit. I just want to say too. I listened to you guys' first 2 episodes. I thought it was really hot.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of Joe Rogan. Like, you know what I mean? So this kind of like, I'm sure a lot of people have said something like that, like in the context of you guys sharing like this thing that you're doing. And when I first moved to Yuma, that's when he kind of started his show back in the day. Like, he's real popular now, you know what I mean? But like, and just having these kinds of discussions to throw into a podcast and just like where you're about your grind and like, it really helped me. So I just think it's hot that there's like a local
I appreciate
version
that, man.
of that, and a lot of big props to you guys, and just getting something and doing it like already sets you aside. So like, yeah.
This was inspired by a video that Tori put up.
Okay.
So that it was just like right after that, I saw her do a video. She does videos on YouTube. Want to give a plug for the YouTube channel real quick?
Oh, crap. I still don't have a link for that. I have
Okay.
to get like a certain amount of subscribers, but you can look it up.
But it's
Just
Tori
plug live.
and then
Okay.
BLK. Tori BLK. And
Yeah.
I saw her do that, and I was just like, that was beautiful.
That's hot.
It just exploded in my mind. And we ended up having coffee, and I said, what do you think about doing a podcast? She said, I always wanted to do a podcast.
That's hot.
I was excited. I was like, oh my God, you want to
Yeah,
do a
yeah,
podcast too? She's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to add the excitement.
Yeah, no, that's
Well, and it was really cool hearing you guys' stories and like just kind of like where you're coming from and
Yeah.
like, and then the dude that you had on the last episode was like
Alan Pruitt.
super
Oh,
smart, and like I'm kind of a Google head too, you know, from like a different angle. Like I'm not in the mix like he is, but so I was like, oh, this
Bay
dude's-
Area, yeah.
I love to talk to this dude. This dude's cool,
Right?
So, yeah, I just thought what you guys are doing is pretty
Appreciate
lit,
the
so,
love, man.
Yeah. Okay, so I grew up in New Mexico. My father was a con artist. My mother grew up on the streets since she was like 5 with my uncle, and like you want to hear like a story on another level, that story's on another level, which you're privy to some of that, right? So,
Yeah.
when I was born, my mom hadn't seen my uncle in like 15 years or something like that. Like they got put into foster homes and like it just was all bad, right? So when they found each other, my uncle was in the church, that old church scene that we were part of.
Mhm.
And I think I was like 5 or 4 or something like that, right? And so then my mom kind of got into it. And, you know, they come from like a past that's a movie.
It's unbelievable. And actually, so your uncle, the one we're talking about, is my mentor.
Yeah.
Chris Tortorici, who I'm probably going to save.
Oh.
Yeah, we're going to, like, he'll be on, like, the last podcast. Like, save
Yeah,
the
he's
best
a
for
G.
last. It's
Yeah.
just going to be intense.
He's like
so.
a Jedi master.
Yeah, seriously.
I
So-
gotta meet him.
Yeah, he's a G.
Yeah.
He's truly like so I had given you a book. You remember that book?
I
gave
love
you?
it. Yeah.
Okay. It's like it talks about the path of the bodhisattva, right? So like it's like if you don't know what bodhisattva is, it's like a Buddhist term, and it's you know, when you reach a certain stage of enlightenment, when people talk about enlightenment, I think most people talk about enlightenment like we talk about heaven. Like it's like a place that you go when you pass. And if that's what you believe, like, who am I to take that from you, right? For some people, it's more like a state of mind, right? So for bodhisattva, if you kind of get to a certain stage of your life where you're like, I'm good. Like, I see what's up. You know what I mean? I'm fine. You kind of have to make a choice at that moment of like, okay, so am I just going to sit in my awareness and like be cool and like, I'm not suffering, so I'm good, right? And like, pass me the remote, I guess. I don't know. Or I'm going to dedicate my life to people, and I'm going to dedicate my life to service, which is really like, if you don't take that step into service, you kind of don't really see the game. You know what I mean? Because it's just circulation, and like everything's got to go through you, right? I know we're getting real abstract real quick, but it's like that's what I feel like he's at. Like he's just kind of like dedicated his life to service.
To service.
Yeah, and he's just like, you get to keep mining the same mine, or you keep diving into the same well to a greater and greater degree if you're willing to let it come through your life and serve people. And when it comes to sacrifice and making the choice to like take the hard lumps, I mean, just simple stuff like letting the homeless dude wash his clothes and take a shower, you know, his dirty clothes, and he gets in your clean shower, and like this dude will do that all day long. You know what I mean? It's like,
You know, he's been my mentor since I was 16, and I don't want to say how old I am, so people in the listening land
He's
think
old.
I'm young.
Just kidding.
But he's been my mentor
he's only
since
got
16.
11 gray hairs.
I've seen him do that constantly with the homeless, and like he's letting these people in and stay there, and he feed and clothe them, and it's just been like, what?
Yeah, he's a G.
It's straight up like, I've never seen anybody do this before. Like, I see people talk it, people get on the stage and like will say it, but this guy gets off of the stage and does it.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could have a stage. He's like, yeah, but no. This is where it's at.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to be like this guy.
Yeah.
This guy's not even, he could get up there and say it, but he's not saying it, he's doing it. And then he'll say it to me, like at coffee at 8 a.m. at Starbucks. And then to him, he's like fulfilled his life mission with just sitting with me, like me alone.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a world.
Yeah.
So a little bit into him, but let's move on real quick.
go ahead.
Because we get, so you went to Hawaii.
I went to Hawaii. So the church that we came out of was real like black and white, right? Real literal in terms of like reading scriptures. It's like,
This is what it says. This is what you got to do.
right. There's not really any like allegory in it. It's kind of like real
Poetry.
literal.
There's no life at that point.
Or just,
I would say.
okay. I mean, yeah. Or just, it's just like, that's just the level that they're at, or
Okay.
the layer of it that they're at, right? Like, and but it's harsh. Like, I'm not trying to minimize like their degree. Like, it's pretty hardcore. So I just like, I had gotten kicked out of church just for being like doing normal
Being a teenager.
teenage boy stuff, you know what I mean? And just kind of like, just the struggle was real. So, but because that was everything that I knew and I grew up in, and I kind of, you know, after my mom had such a crazy past, and she went real hard into the church because I think her heart was in the right place, that she wanted her kids to kind of like grow up opposite of how she grew up, which was chaos.
That's beautiful.
And in a lot of ways, I think she was very successful. You know what I mean? And I have a lot of gratitude towards my mom for that, right? So, but yeah, there just kind of came a point where I didn't realize it, but I think I hit the ceiling, and I didn't know that. And so I had to get the boot, so to speak, right? And like, I thought it was crazy though, because when I got out of there, and my friend had moved to Hawaii, and then I was like, yo, what's good? And she was like, well, there's a job out here if you want to go. And she told me that like on a Monday, and within a week I was in Hawaii. Like, I had moved
Dang.
everything. People didn't
That's
know.
quick.
I was gone. I think she told me like on a Monday. No, she told me like on a Wednesday. I wrote my resume over the weekend. By Monday I had an interview. By Wednesday I was on a flight.
Wow.
I want to get that call to Hawaii.
Right?
Why don't people calling me and say, hey, come to Hawaii, there's a job. A resume. So you had previous experience. Like, what was this for YMCA, you said?
Yeah, at the time I was like working like banker's hours. I was the assistant administrator to the vice president of a bank, and so that sounds really fancy.
Yeah,
but
you sound
basically,
like-
all it meant was that I was like the pinch hitter for whoever didn't show up to work, right? So I could do a teller job, I could help in loans, I could work the back, I could do whatever, right? And so we had all these branches, and they'd be like, so and so didn't show up to work today. You need to drive an hour and get to work on time.
So then you go from that to writing a resume for YMCA to work with kids.
Yeah. And I didn't really know what I was signing up for. I just knew that I was going to Hawaii. And then I got there, and this is kind of where the adventure started. So I got to Hawaii. Hawaii's beautiful, of course. It's you know what I mean? It was everything that you would think, right? And I'm staying on the North Shore at a YMCA camp. So we're 6 miles from the nearest town, which is literally just a tiny town. But it was gangster. It was like out. I lived in a hut on the beach for 2 years.
In a hut.
Yeah.
That is gangsta.
Like straight up in a hut
Wow.
on a beach. Yeah. And then, so it was interesting because, in the 70s, like 60s, 70s, there in the East Coast, they kind of started creating this thing called experiential education. And it was like, I think kind of like a backlash from like the 50s when like everybody went to school to go work in factories and stuff like that. And it was real like robot style.
Yeah,
you know?
you're going to get a job and you're going to stay at this job forever.
Yeah.
Get your pension. And
Yeah. So University of New Hampshire, I think, created this program or this kind of new field of education called experiential education. And it blew up real big. So I kind of caught like maybe like the second wave of that without knowing at the time. Like it was kind of like resurging again. So I'm out at this camp and they're like training us in these like exercises, right? And it's like, we use the ball, pass the ball around, all these kind of like little games that you play with kids and stuff like that.
how old are these kids?
Between 5th grade all the way up through adults. Like we have different groups
Okay.
come through and stuff. But a lot of 5th graders, because there it would be like the culture was for 5th grade, you go on your trip and they would go up to the North Shore and camp, like go to camp for like 2 days.
That's
or
like a
something.
thing they do.
Yeah, everybody in Hawaii, if you grew up in Hawaii, you went to camp.
That's
Okay.
so fun.
Yeah.
For like 3 days.
You're just making me and Tori jealous right now, but it's all right.
No, we're
I'm
gonna have
just
to take
kidding.
a trip
We're
over
going.
there.
Yeah, we could go to, I got people in Hawaii.
You got peeps?
Yeah.
All right. That's all.
So, Mama Sue. So basically, they're teaching us these games and stuff, but it wasn't really like, there wasn't like a thread sewing it all together for me. It was like disjointed information, right? So one of the classes, they said we had to do like these little like team building exercises, trust building exercises, right? And I'm young, I'm 19 at the time. So it was like, I'm trying to like figure out this new scene or whatever. Then I started kind of asking my coworkers, like, yo, I need like a little extra help here. Like, I don't really understand the point, and maybe that's obvious, but I just didn't get it. And none of the adults could just simple, like, so what's trust?
Oh, so you're like, okay, wait a minute. I'm supposed to teach this.
Yes.
So I need you to teach me what we're supposed to be
Yes.
teaching. And you went to your superiors and
Yes.
you asked a question and they gave you a blank stare.
Yeah, sit with anybody, any grown up, sit with them and say, what's trust?
They're like, that's your job.
Yeah, I think
Right?
Tori got it right.
Or even just describe it. What is trust? Put that to words. Right? Like,
Don't look at me, look
That's
at Tori.
difficult. That's like that's philosophical right there, man.
yeah.
But you know what's interesting is if you go back into the last episode. I mean, we were talking about Simon Sinek, and Simon Sinek says trust gets created through through touch,
Interesting.
and through touch when the serotonin gets released and these chemicals, and that's why a handshake is so important.
Right.
And the fact that we have abandoned handshakes to like sign on the paper here is kind of always leaves this room, like this gap for distrust.
Interesting.
So like a trust actually gets built through touch and like eye-to-eye contact and sitting down and having coffee with somebody.
Yeah.
And actually, and it's funny because in his book, he talks about there's this point or this guy that wanted to do a deal with this businessman. And this guy has a lot of money. He's an entrepreneur, and this businessman wanted his business, And so he said, okay, but first we're going to jump on these trampolines for a little while.
Okay.
And the businessman's in a suit and a tie, and the other guy's wearing shorts and flip flops, and he's like, yeah, so we're gonna jump on this trampoline. And so then the businessman had to jump on this trampoline with this other guy for a while,
Okay.
and have fun and giggle. But that built that bond.
Yeah.
It built a little bit of a bond there. And
Yeah.
so, go ahead.
And that's it, right? It's like the science of the space between,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what I experienced with the trust thing is that like everybody kind of knows what trust feels like, but nobody really knows how to describe it, right? So then I put the question to the 5th graders, and right off the jump, this 5th grader is like, trust is what you do when you give somebody a chance knowing they might hurt you. Just rock that.
Man, I got chills. I got chills. I got
Like,
chills.
damn.
I was just
fifth
like,
grader.
It was kind of like a little bit of like a lightning bolt moment, Like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make it bigger than it was, but it was substantial, and I was just like, it was almost like saying like, "Oh, here's the doorknob. Do you want to open the door?" And that kind of started a whole journey of experiential education. So I put in a whole decade worth of work at that point. After that, yeah.
You put in a decade in Hawaii?
I did 5 years in Hawaii, and then I moved to the Bay Area because we were. So we had set up like these leadership courses with high school students, and there's one school in Hawaii in Waipahu, asked us to come. They already had like a relationship with our staff. So they asked us to come and be part of this program. And what they were going to do is they call the continental United States, they call it the mainland. So they were going to bring a company from the mainland, which is the company that I ended up working for. They brought that to a high school in Hawaii, and it was the two founders came and led this 5-hour workshop or 6-hour workshop at this high school with like 150 people, and so we participated. And then what we did is we took the leadership team from those students. It would be like 100 students and 20 adults. So we got I think it was like 12 students or 15 students, and we did like a leadership course with them before the program. And then when they came and did the program, it had like this pretty substantial effect in the school. And then we had the leadership students ongoing after that to kind of support them as they kind of, because Waipahu is like not a joke, right? Like it's rough. So
like ghetto rough?
Yeah, it's hardcore.
Okay.
There's a lot of meth there.
Oh,
I mean, it's a beautiful place, and there's a lot of beautiful people there. A lot of Filipinos, a lot of Samoans. But it could get live, yeah. So
I just want to stop right there because that's always interests me, because you could be in like this place that I would call like paradise almost, like this beautiful place, but it doesn't matter where you're at.
No.
Like geography, it matters where you're at, like in here.
It's just a giant treadmill in outer space. That's all it is.
You know, and that it's like you could live in paradise, but then just be living in hell in here.
Yeah.
So
so in that vein, right, is like, I think that's what I think the journey kind of was. The internal journey was really like attractive to me, you know, like, I don't know, like I was pretty all over the place, you know, like I think that my upbringing saved me from a lot of like the real violent kind of overt crazy stuff that my parents grew up, or like my mom's generation grew up in, my uncle. But there was still like a lot of the head trip part of it was still all there.
So you say head trip, what do you mean?
Well, it's kind of like, you know, how you see yourself. I guess I would say it like this: how you see yourself, how you value yourself has everything to do with how you interact with the world, right? And so if you're coming from a place where you inherently think that you're broken at a very fundamental level, then you're going to kind of interact with the world in like a fundamentally broken way.
Everything's going to be broken.
Or at least have that kind of tang on it, right?
So it's like that's the glasses in which you perceive life through.
And I think that's where, you know, kind of going back to the religion, that a lot of people have their hearts broken, because it's like it almost becomes futile. It's like, why am I trying if I'm broken? You know? And I know that there's a way that we'll try and use our brokenness as fuel to like create momentum. So, you know, like you hear a lot of people talk about like my fear of failure, or my fear of being alone, or my fears drive me into success.
So that puts a little bit of gas in the tank
for a lot of people.
But does that get you all the way?
Right. And so like, you know, you'll hear like comedians or artists talk about like, oh, I didn't want to go to therapy, or I didn't want to do the work, quote unquote, because I was afraid I'd lose my art. Because a lot of people come from that dark place, right? And you don't realize you're kind of like, there's 3 more corners in the room. Like you don't have to just sit in the one. Like you can use the whole
options.
Space. Right. Yeah. And actually what's waiting for you is way more wide open. But if you've come from this place where I think human beings have a propensity to be negative, and I actually think that it's a beautiful thing. I think it serves a purpose, because if you're in the middle of like a snowstorm or a blizzard, and or you're in the middle of the dark and you can't even see your hand in front of your face, right? Just stay there a few more seconds and watch yourself start to trip. Watch yourself start to lose your bearings. It's only going to take a few minutes, you know, before your mind starts to bug out a little bit. Okay, well then, in that moment, being a little negative actually becomes kind of useful, right? Like it's a real easy way to throw up a partition and say that's a wall, and I'm not there. I'm not that. I'm not over there. Because I know that I'm over here if I'm not over there. And so we kind of use the negative, right? I'm not you. I'm not like them. I'm not over there. It's not like this. And so all
perspective.
Yeah, you're trying to create. You're trying to get a grasp on stuff.
And then you get a little bit of a compass.
Yeah, the problem is that it cuts you off from all the things that you're not going to participate in.
So it's just a way, like it's like step 1, but it's not like the step. After that.
Yeah, it's like and I don't say it to throw stones, but it's kind of immature. right? And there's like there's a more graceful step after that, and it might look something like standing in the middle of the swirl and being okay with that, and becoming the swirl.
There it is.
And like going away and realizing who you are might not be what you think that you are, and it's gonna be okay.
And that's the ultimate where in my mind. But let's get back a little bit. Let's bring
Why
it.
you gotta get all deep, bro?
So MTV, where was MTV? Is it the Bay or is it Hawaii?
Okay, so I personally was not on MTV. I dipped right before my turn was. A lot of my coworkers were on it, and
But the organization, the thing you were a part of.
yeah, at
okay.
that point of it, I was a senior staff member, and what we had taken was Rich and Yvonne's structure, and we kind of helped them develop it. And that was kind of like a crazy time in the organization, where there was like a handful of us that they kind of handpicked, right? So when I was in Hawaii, they were like, "Yo, will you come work with us?" And that happened to a few people. That happened to a few people, and so it was like we had this beautiful kind of chapter in that organization that had like a beginning and an end in my mind. But while it was like on, and we were just kind of developing this stuff, and we were learning a lot about our own psychology and each other's psychology, and it was like a lot of processing and like crazy. Some of it I look back and I'm like, I probably wouldn't do that again, but like some of it was pretty intense, and so yeah, that's where we kind of co-developed this process, and then it started doing so well that it ended up on Oprah a couple times.
Okay, so yeah, I saw that in your. Did you meet Oprah?
No,
Oh,
Rich and Yvonne
man.
were the founders, so they got to go do the Oprah show.
I
We
saw-
were all like, "Yo, let us get on the show," and then they went and did
I
it.
saw that in your bio. I was
Yeah.
like, please say he knows Oprah because
Yeah. No, they do.
One day I want to meet Oprah
Yeah.
because isn't she the greatest?
I mean, I guess
You would
if
know.
dig
Come
her,
on.
like,
I think if Jesus was going to come back
Oh.
and he wanted to
Oh.
come
Are you gonna
back,
my
vote for
goodness.
Oprah?
no,
for president?
If
Right?
Jesus,
And did you hear about that?
yeah, I hope she runs.
Really?
Yeah, listen,
I
listen,
was like,
listen.
TV stars
again?
to
It went from
stop running for
Trump to
TV
Oprah.
for the
If
president.
Jesus wanted to come back again as a baby, who better to come through? Oprah.
Oh my God.
Oprah. I'm telling you. Oprah, she's done so much. I know. And there's a lot of people that don't like her, but I think there was a study done at one university that people that don't like her, that was shown that they don't have a soul. They're born without one. So
Okay.
anyway.
The
But you didn't.
redheads don't like Oprah.
Yeah, the people without souls don't like Oprah. No, but in all seriousness,
I think
I'm a fan.
she's got a really cool story, and like
She's helped
Oh, yeah.
introduce a lot of people, like put a platform for Deepak,
Yeah.
for Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, like a bunch of people kind of did her show and then
Yeah.
kind of catapulted them into their own space.
Yeah.
So I really I appreciate her, and all joking aside, but
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
But
Well, and she was real kind of like, it was beautiful because I think we did the Oprah show twice, and she kind of catapulted our whole scene into like another echelon. And then after that, MTV picked us up and did a show called If You Really Knew Me, and my sister was on that show as one of the facilitators. She's like my best friend.
Oh, okay.
And so our whole crew, like I had a bunch of us, and then yeah, man, before I stood up, I was just kind of like, you know what, I need to make moves. I think I hit the ceiling again.
Okay, so did the ceiling hit again in the
Yeah.
Bay Area?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you dipped out. So like this whole thing of are we where yet? So you end up in Egypt somehow, and then Tel
Yeah.
Aviv. We were having coffee one day, and you were telling me about. So
Yeah.
that you've kind of been some places, and in the conversation, it was like we're having coffee, just a
Yeah.
bunch of dudes, and he was like, "Italy's cool, and like Spain," and I'm like, "What?" Like I've been to Tucson and like Mexicali, that's
Tucson's off the chain, bro.
you know what I mean?
My
But-
cousin lives in Tucson.
Oh, okay. But so you're in the Bay. You got like
Yeah.
Is that where you're introduced to? You spoke a little bit about the Buddhist side. of
Yeah.
things.
So you guys know Jack Kerouac, right? The famous author, wrote On the Road, right? And like the whole beatnik scene from like the 50s and the 60s, and like
I'm familiar, not
beat
too
poetry.
much, but
Right. So like you remember like poetry slams were big in like 2000s, right? 2010. Okay. Well, all of that comes a large part. There's like a whole poetry scene, right? That helped influence that. That was okay. So the 1950s. World War II's over, but we have all this apparatus, right? Industrial Revolution. What do we do with our time? If people wanted to drive across the country, you had to drive on dirt highways or small highways. So they built like the first interstates, right? And like that's when like being a young man, getting your car and going on
then
road
just going
trips
on
was
that
like a
trip.
thing, right? And like the whole Americana
And there's
started,
songs about hitting the highway.
like the beginning of that religion started, right?
So that the end, that like the farthest place you can go west,
Yeah,
the Bay Area.
go to Cali. So Jack Kerouac wrote a book called Dharma Bums, and Dharma Bums was like a whole like kind of like flip the table over on like the straight edge kind of American, like press white shirts and go to work kind of thing. So when I was in the Bay, I was blessed to kind of meet with a group of people that had started something called the Dharma Punks, and these were all like old school punk rock crew. Like they were like older brothers kind of to me, and they were like one. Yeah, it'd be like if you had like an older brother, whatever. So they started this thing like as an homage to the Dharma Bums. They called it the Dharma Punks, right? And it was like, let's take, instead of doing it like on Jack Kerouac level, let's do like a punk rock version of like the Dharma of Buddhism.
Mm-hmm. And Dharma means you're calling.
Yeah, the
right?
Dharma is like the path, right?
Yeah, your
you gotta
destiny
walk
almost.
the path. And like all good traditions, great traditions, Buddhism has like tenets of that path, right? And so the Dharma is kind of like all those pillars of Buddhism. And I never would call myself a Buddhist or say that I even really truly practice Buddhism. Like I could say that I practice Christianity, but it really has become a practice. And so to see it, most people I think would say I am a Christian, and it's kind of like
an identity for them at that point.
Yeah, and if you don't hold it in that way, it's kind of seen as like you're actually okay. Well, then you're not as down as we are because it doesn't look the way that it looks for us.
Yeah, Bloods and Crips.
Yeah, so to me, actually, and I'm just saying this for myself, if I was to hold it that way, that's actually pretty non-committal compared to like what it became. That what it became was so much more committed and so much more absorbing and so much more fully consuming than even that. Well, I learned that that was an option for Christianity because I was around the Dharma Punk crew. And so, meditate and destroy, right? It's like, get rid of the ego and so it was cool because I got to kind of be around these people, and coming up from like a real religious past, they would ask me kind of like questions about Christianity, but I didn't even really see myself as like how we would call ourselves saved or whatever, right? Like I just was trying
whatever that means.
I just was trying to make my way in the world, and that's where I came from, but I didn't have anything else really, but I wasn't trying to hold it up necessarily. Like I would go to churches, like big giant churches in Hawaii, and it's just, this is not my scene, man. Like I'm faking the funk if I come here. I'm lying to
You got to be
myself.
true to yourself.
Yeah.
There's that part, that core.
Being a poser, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be a poser.
So anyway, when I went up to the Bay Area and I started working with Challenge Day, and we, I got to be out part on the scene and the Dharma Punk crew and stuff, it just kind of was like, that's where I started to learn about Taoism and Buddhism and like this other conversation started opening up. And it was almost like, if I say like, what color is the sky? Everybody's gonna be like, it's blue. Okay, but what shade of blue is the sky right now?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was like that. It was like, oh, I'm looking at the sky for the first time. Kind of, like it was pretty eye opening. It was. So as I went on that journey with them, and mindfulness became part of the conversation and stuff like that. So then, as I kind of pulled on that thread, it led me to Sufi, and Sufi is like the mystics of Islam.
So you went from Buddhism, or like that. To me, Buddhism isn't really a religion; it's a philosophy. So
Buddhists would call it the science of the mind.
Okay. Which is interesting. So what I think it's Ernest Holmes from the you can go to the spiritual center here, and that's what Ernest Holmes would call it. And
okay.
So you'd say a science of the mind. Okay.
Well, that's what they would call it, right?
Oh, they would call it.
That's what like the Dalai Lama would call it, right?
I wonder if Ernest Holmes ever read stuff like that, because I was really into that. Like
Are
for
you
a
into
whole
Buddhism?
No, science of mind.
Okay.
That John's talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think usually a religion. Okay, this is hot. So I think the world would call religion like a belief system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a tradition. I don't think that that's like super accurate. I think a more accurate description would be to call what we would say religion is like a belief system, or right? To me, what a religion is is it almost can have like a negative connotation to it, I think, for a lot of people. So let's embrace that in a way and say, what if religion is any idea that I would make more important than you or any person, right?
That's
so
deep.
I can make a religion out of anything.
Anything.
Right? I could be a man who comes home from work and my lady's there, you know, and my kids are there and I don't want to spend time with them because I'm tired. So here's my paycheck. That counts, right? Or, you know what I mean? Or I look in the mirror and I got a little extra pounds on me and I'm kicking my own butt because I'm not where I think I should be. And now suddenly I find that there's an idea that's more important than the person that I'm looking at.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so even between me and myself, I can outrun myself. You could
create that.
And and so this is kind of, we go to that part of the conversation where it's like, well, that helps me get motivated. That helps me get things done. Right.
So that's like step one again. That's like the immaturity of it.
Right. Well, is there like a more open version of this where I can stay in step with myself and stop kind of forcing myself in a way that doesn't afford me any like dignity or choice or sovereignty, which really is powerful, right? Because what I started realizing is I was becoming like a spiritual collector. Like I went to go see the Sufi, right? Because I read that book, The Alchemist, like everybody else did at that time. And, you know, and I had already had my sights set on Africa, on Egypt for different reasons. And
so, okay, Christianity behind you, Buddhism behind you, but not really behind you because they're always still with you. But then now it's Sufism, which is the mystics versions of the Muslims.
I was just kind of looking at like, what are all the colors in the crayons in the box, right? And so when I ended up at Sufi, that was pretty powerful.
I know nothing except for like I read some stuff from Rumi and, you know, Hafiz.
Okay, so Islam. Okay, I'm about to say some things that might hurt people's feelings right now, and I apologize. Okay, but from where I sit, okay, if you look at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Jesus is in the Quran more than Muhammad is. Right?
Oh, I guess I don't know. I've never read it.
I'm saying it is. Okay, Jesus is in the Quran and talked about more than Muhammad.
Okay.
So you have like these 3 chapters of the same conversation, right? It's like Judaism. It's like the Lord of the Rings. You got like the trilogy.
Okay.
Okay. So, and if you put all 3 of those together, that's actually probably a more complete picture of the conversation when you include all 3 parts of the conversation.
So like all those colors make the rainbow.
Right.
Well, it's like if we're all 3 sitting here having this conversation, it's probably most accurate if you include all 3 of us
in the conversation.
Or if, you know, after fact, if you want to know what happened, go to all 3 people. Right. So it's like go to all 3 religions and find out what happened.
That's a good way to put it.
Right.
I've never heard anybody say that before.
And when I've said that to people, and I've had people get really upset at me because
my religion is the right one.
And
whatever side you sit on.
My God's the real God and their God's not God.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here's what I would say to that. Okay. If I'm in Yuma and I want to tell a family member or somebody that I care about that I love them, I'll use the word love. Okay? If I go 10 minutes across the border to Max, I'll say amor. If I go across the world and I go to Cairo, I'll say ya habibi. Right? If I go to Thailand, I'll say, I don't remember what they say. Right? It's like
different languages.
I'm making a different sound with my mouth.
But you're communicating the same.
Am I saying the same thing that the dude is telling his wife in Thailand or in Pakistan when he tells his lady that he loves her?
And then who are you to go to the person in Thailand and say, no, it's I love you, or no,
it's English, bro.
It's English.
Your love's not real unless you use English.
Like, you must not love your wife, dude. I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Amo, like, what?
What? You have a 5,000-year-old history? Yeah, that don't count.
Yeah.
We've been here for 200 years, man.
Erase that.
This is the new school. You're in the old
Socrates
school.
and Plato, and like now we create history in the Western society.
So when you have a dude who's 37 years old and he goes and stands in the middle of the nowhere, and he cries out to the sky and he says, I don't know what I'm doing in my life. But he's in Sudan. Who does he cry out to? He might say the word Allah, but you know what the word Allah literally translates?
No.
God.
Okay.
That's what the word means. It means God.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to play the God game, and you think that there's only one true God, but we're going to slice gods up and say that religion has a different God than me.
Just because you say it in a different...
That sounds like there's more than one God then.
Right.
Which is,
So there's either one God or there's not, right?
So the way, the way I've kind of framed it in my mind is like, if you heard your kid screaming or crying and your kid doesn't know your name or doesn't specifically say your name, like, my name's Jonathan or Dad or whatever, saying some words.
But he calls you Baba. Or
calls you whatever.
Yeah.
You're still going to go run and see what's wrong with your kid.
Yeah.
So if God, whatever this is, this other thing, this bigger, here's his son saying, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, or his daughter, I don't know what I'm doing. He doesn't need to get the words right.
Yeah.
It's what he's communicating right.
Yeah.
That's how I frame it.
So Sufi is like this, okay?
Okay.
They say that there's the letter of the scripture, then there's the heart of the scripture, then there's the heart of the scripture, okay? Sufi would be the heart of the heart, okay? The Sufi conversation is a conversation of love. That's Rumi, Hafiz, Gibran, right? Where
very romantic poets.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the beauty of a religious person crying out to God is similar to a dog who misses its master. Like, there's just a sweetness there, and you could get kind of caught up in like, well, you're trying to make me do something, or you're trying to what, right? Like, we're all like, I'm a ninja, you can't catch me. But if I would succumb to love, and I would just let myself participate and be destroyed by that in the most beautiful way, then that, once again, now we're at the space between. It's not about you. It's not about me.
It's about we.
It's about we. It's about us. And now suddenly that becomes real beautiful, right? And so this is kind of the thing about religion, right? Like, I think a lot of people look at God because we come from maybe like historically in our past, maybe a religious past, or maybe our communities have a lot of religious people, or maybe we didn't grow up religious, but we have elders in our families that are religious. And the world is changing, right? Like, what was cool 10 years ago ain't the same today, right? And in some ways it's more free.
Exactly.
In some ways it's not, right? It's just changing.
It's changing.
And so in that place, I think if you're trying to sew it all up and sum it all up, you're going to have a hard time. Like, each person's a different person, right? Now, if you sit with people and you say, like, if you're able to get to the level of the conversation where you can't even ask somebody, like, so what do you think about life or God? What is God to you? What is religion, right? You have people that are like, I think atheism is becoming more and more important or more popular these days, right? Because it's all like the scientific method. Okay, well, I like to talk about religion in a very scientific way. For a lot of people, religion is superstition, right? So it's like Gandalf is in the sky and he's watching me, and that's the dynamic, right? But what about if I want to say the everything and the nothing at the same time?
Now you sound like a Taoist.
Right? I want to say all the stuff in the world that is and that is not, but could be. What word do I say that with? Can I just use the word God? Can I describe the undescribable with a feeble attempt and use the word God?
Eckhart Tolle, who I'm a fan of, he'll just say being, because he would kind of like dismiss the word God, and not in like in a bad way, but just in a way of like, it has negative connotations for people. So I'm just going to put this word to the side, but I'm still talking about the same thing. But if that word offends you, like, so like I would say father a lot. I say father. I just referred to God, the universe. I'd say father because that's a cool term to me. I can relate to that. But if you're a young woman that was molested by her father, and you have issues with that, and I'm saying like, oh, God's a father, and she's like, yeah, my father, what's going on in here? What my dad did to me, I don't like that guy that you're talking about. And I'll be like, oh, no, well, no, that's just something I say. Like, you say whatever you want. Mother, okay, like, what language, what feels good to you? And then I'll get him to that point and like, well, just say that, because it has ears. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of why I like the slow play, right? Because it's like, where are you? You know what I mean? Like, normally when we sit and have a conversation with people about religion, it's, let me get you somewhere. Let me work on you.
Like, because I'm there already.
Yeah, let me fix
where
you.
I'm there, like I've arrived.
Right. And it's, to me, what's hot is when I could sit down and be like, so what step are you on? What page are you on in the book? And you're like, oh, on page 494. I'm like, oh, I haven't got there yet. What's that like? You know what I mean? And like, oh, I haven't even picked that part of the book up yet. Or, and now we can start to, it starts to get kind of weird to talk about, because at some point it becomes profane. It's like at some point you get to a threshold where anything that I say beyond this point really isn't for other people to listen to.
So you're saying profane, so like it becomes a little bit more intimate. It's between you.
Yeah, it's not that what's happening is bad or gross. It's just that it's not for public consumption, because I'm in the intricacies of how I'm relating to myself and the world. I think, and that's kind of the part of the journey that I've been on. So when I went and worked at the organization in the Bay Area, and we're doing all of this like work with each other, right? I mean, straight up like weird stuff, like straight up hippie Bay Area
ayahuasca
workshop, deep. Let's just say that it got deep.
Oh, damn! So that could be in the thing. Whoa.
I mean, you're a grown man.
Yeah.
You got 3 grown men holding you down as you go through your childhood issues. Right. It's just like a lot of stuff that now I don't think I would do again, but I was young and we were there.
You experienced it.
And it's not that it was bad. It just was different.
It just is what it is.
It let you kind of find a side of yourself that at that time, that was what I needed apparently to go through to find it.
All right.
So I don't really like to take that from other people if that's part of the path, right? Like, who am I to say, only I get to drink that cup of water. You don't get to have that cup of water. Okay, but that being said, don't get it twisted. I'm not having the same conversation about the same subtleties, right? Like, there was a time when I would probably have sounded very atheist, when I would have sounded very Buddhist, when I would have sounded very whatever, right?
Sufi. And
the reason that I have actively chosen to pick up Christianity and practice it and wield it on purpose and not be confused about that is because it's the root that I come from.
Okay, so you got your root. So let's go back to so then Egypt. How do you get to Egypt?
With a plane.
So you get to
With a
Egypt
plane.
on a plane, but why? So and then is it like, do you have a hut waiting for you again?
No, I just went to Egypt.
What do you mean you just went to Egypt?
I just showed up.
It's like, what's up, Egypt? What's up, Egypt? I'm
It
here.
took me an hour and a half to get out of the airport
Can I
because I
find
was terrified.
Gaddafi anywhere?
I landed in Cairo. The airport was like, I mean, the writing is all squiggly, right? It's all Arabic. You don't know. It's written from right to left. You wouldn't even know that. You don't know what you're looking at. It's hieroglyphics. I get to the airport. Now, we're used to an American or a European airport, okay? This was like an airport that was not a European or an American airport, okay? It's different. The standards were different. You show up. It just feels like it's chaos. I was so overwhelmed. I figured out that's a bathroom. I just went into the bathroom as soon as I got off the plane, went to the last stall, closed the door, sat down on the lid, and just tripped for like an hour.
Panic attack.
Soak it in.
Tripping balls.
Me and Tori can relate to panic attacks.
Yeah.
I was just like, where have you brought yourself, bro?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And then when I went out, I came out of the bathroom. My luggage was the only luggage left from all the luggage off my flight. They had kind of stuck it on the side waiting. So I went and grabbed it and I walked outside and it was just like, Egypt! Screaming in your face.
So was this like a Mecca thing for you? Like you already kind of knew about the Sufism, so you wanted to go to the heartland?
There was a little bit of that.
Okay.
It was kind of like I knew I wanted to walk the Nile and just kind of see, maybe go towards the source and kind of. There's like an old saying, right, that says, "The man that walks the Nile will find himself," and it's kind of like.
So you went to go look for yourself.
In a way, I guess.
In a way, you had to go somewhere to
I didn't
look
know
for
that
yourself.
at the time. I don't think I could have articulated that at the time. But
So
in
were you
hindsight,
talking to
yeah.
your uncle at this time? Did you tell him like I'm going to Egypt?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So what'd your uncle say when he said you're going to Egypt?
Have a good time, and you might find out you didn't need to go when you get back.
I'm just going to let that sit for a little while.
He was right.
So you're saying you went to Egypt to find yourself, and then you found out you didn't need to go.
Yeah.
Unpack that a little bit for me.
Well, it's like, Vice, that show, the Vice News or whatever,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? Okay, so I seen this. They had this one dude. He was like a Buddhist, or no, not a Buddhist, but a Hindu.
Mhm.
But he's a white dude. He's from like Bakersfield or something. I don't know. And but he's in India. So Vice is in India, and dude's like fully. He's trying to like absorb it in, right? And I know that feeling, right? Where you claim, you just allow yourself to become this other place. And so they ask him, so like, what's your name? And he gives them some like Indian deep name, right? And they're like, I thought your name was Scott or whatever. I don't know. And he was just like, the look on his face and how he responded was like, that's so unspiritual.
Yeah.
And it was just like, no, blood, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
You're disowning yourself to go be someone that you're not. And
So
how
you're trying
would
to
you
find
ever-
you're trying to find yourself, but you're just creating another self instead
yeah,
of
you still, it's like, go home and do your laundry. Why are you at my house?
yeah. You're not taking off the clothes. You're just putting on somebody else's
Thank
clothes.
you.
Okay.
That's
so,
what it means to become a spiritual collector.
So then now you're in Egypt, and then you just how
Egypt
long-
was a trip. I mean, I
how
was
long?
in Egypt for a year, so I could talk
damn.
about a
Wow.
lot.
How do
in
you
Egypt.
eat at that? What do you just showed up and like Egypt? What up? I'm here. You grew your beard, right? You had like
Okay, so
you look like one of them because you kind of do.
some context. Okay. So
For the people that are listening, you
Right.
could pass off as you could fit right in, right?
yeah, man, I could shapeshift.
Cool.
My one of my proudest moments is if you go to the southern part of Egypt, which ironically is called Upper Egypt. If you go to the southern part of Egypt, they have Luxor and Aswan, right? It's King Tut's tomb and where the dam is at and all this stuff. Well, what they do is the tourist industry, like the actual tour, going somewhere as a tourist, was invented by the French going to Egypt like a couple hundred years ago. Like that didn't exist before. Okay. So if you want to go see the original tour bus madness, you go to Egypt. It's the worst. I feel for any older people that think it's a good idea to go get in the tour bus and go eat buffet food in Cairo or anywhere else in that country or any country. I'm just like, yo, get your backpack. Let's go see some cool stuff. So when I get over there, it's just kind of like, I don't know. It's forcing me to go back and look at who I am, but I don't know how to say that. I don't know how to articulate that, right? So like my friend is from Cairo, right? Sharif. And his family's Coptic, which is the original Christian.
Yeah, like if you want to take Christianity back and boil it down to the
Yeah. Well, what it was the original Pharaonic line, like the original Egyptian Coptic line, like back in ancient Egypt, the language they spoke was Coptic. And so if you want to go see the original Egyptians, you go look at the Coptic community, because what there was in the old times when the Arabs came and took over the area and converted it to Islam, they didn't want you to convert to Islam. They wanted you to stay whatever your religious tradition was, because you had to pay a tax for not being a Muslim. So they wanted to collect the
so
taxes.
they needed the tax. So
Yeah,
for like
Rome did the same thing, right? It was like a very common MO.
that's why Rome would put over like Herod over the Jews.
Yeah,
and
yeah. So we want you to stay. We want you to stay what you are. Just pay us.
Just pay us.
Yeah.
And pay your respects. And
Well, at that time, if you didn't have the money, you converted,
oh,
right?
so it's
that's
like
why,
an either or.
That's why you would have like a lot of Jews that would go underground and in air quotes renounce being a Jew, and then they would pick up whatever other tradition of whoever was dominating the land at that time, and then practice their religion in secret because they couldn't afford to pay the tax. Well, Coptics were the original Egyptians, the upper class. They were the only ones who had the money to pay the tax. So if you go back and you look at
So they got to preserve their
who
identity.
yeah,
Right.
more than
Their
the average
customs.
person. Yeah.
So you're over there. You get with the Coptics.
So my friend grew up Coptic, and his mom was there, and I went and visited his mom, and she was like, "You'll find what you're looking for when you find it." And I remember just feeling like almost agitated by that.
Mm-hmm.
She's a sweet. I mean, his mom's a saint. She's so sweet. These people looked out for me. But I just remember feeling like, you don't know me. You know, like I just had like this thing inside of me, like, you don't know what I'm about. You don't know where I'm coming from. But the truth is I was looking for something. I just didn't know what that was. It was like I needed to just take a lap. Well, when you get far enough out there, you realize, I mean, I'm sitting on the banks of the Nile River in Sudan. Okay, I got to Sudan the day that they issued the international arrest warrant for al-Bashar, right? So he's kicking all the NGOs out of the country, and I'm on my way in. I arrive, and I lost all my money because I had changed with the money changers on the ferry. It takes 24 hours to sail from Upper Egypt into Sudan over a huge man-made lake. when you get to the other side, they drop you at the edge of the desert, and they're just like, "There's a town somewhere over there. Go
Like,
get
good
it."
luck.
Yeah.
Wow.
So on the way walking, on the ferry, I had changed my money, and I didn't have a lot of money, but I changed some of my cash, or all my cash. And normally when I travel, I have it stashed, right? So, but this time, because I just changed it, I put it in my pocket. I think what I did is I pulled my headphones out, and I accidentally dropped my money. But I'm in Sudan, blood. There's no ATMs in Sudan. Like, they got America's got sanctions on Sudan, so you're not getting money sent to you. Like, so I'm in Sudan 20 minutes, and now I'm broke.
Damn.
Wow.
And I literally heard a voice in my mind go, well, this is going to make the movie really good. I just started laughing.
There we go, Rigo. Here's another project for film right here. This
Documentary right
yeah,
here.
wow.
So then these two German hippies, dreadlocks and all, come walking out the desert, going in the opposite direction, because they're going to get on the ferry to go to Egypt the next day, right? So we're just crossing paths, and they're like, why are you laughing by yourself in the middle of the desert, you psycho? And I was like, I just lost all my money. And they were like, what? Well, we'll look for it. And I was like, yeah, good luck with that. So my mom had written me a card before I left, and she had thrown like her pocket. It was like $20 or something. Like she'd thrown her pocket cash in the card, and I had just stashed it in my bag. So I went and dig in, and I found the card, and it was like a few bucks in the card. And it's 5-to-1 from American dollars to Sudanese pounds, right? So at the time. So, and then I had a cell phone, so I sold the cell phone. So I had like a little bit of coin to last me a few days, right? Now, I've already been 9 months in Africa, right? So like I've studied sculpture by this time. I've like found different little odd jobs, made friends, like networked. Like
You got a network.
Yeah, I've got Bedouin up in the Sinai. Like I've got all these people now, and so it wasn't like I wasn't fully like unprepared at that point. But it was like, okay, what are we gonna do? And so then the Germans came back, and they were like, look, we didn't find your money. They came up to me too.
That's
Like
okay.
I didn't even go looking for them. So they came back to the Laconda that night, like a little hostel, and they were like, we've been in Sudan for a month now, and based on what it took for two of us to live, we think you'll get by off of this money. And they gave me $250 cash in American US dollars.
What?
Which is high currency, right? So that
What a blessing.
5 times that, multiply that by 5.25, and that's how much money I actually had.
So at this
So I had
point,
more money because I lost my money.
So
I had more money after I got hooked up.
so this thing, whatever you want to call it, Allah, God, universe is looking out for you.
Here's how I would say it. That feels real like mystical the way you say it.
Okay.
Right? Like they say a real Sufi would never call himself a Sufi. A mystic would never call himself a mystic, right? Because it's real it's like schmarmy. It's like syrupy. It's romantic, right? Here's the okay.
Well,
let me
give me
say it
some
like
context
this.
then.
Let me say.
Don't just
Let me
tell
back
me
up.
that.
Right. Let me back up.
Putting the host on blast? No, I'm just kidding.
Go slow. We just met. Let's say that there's a premise of this conversation, of all the conversations of religion, and the premise is this: something is going on, right? Like the Earth is going around the sun, unless you're a flat earther, right? The Earth is going around the sun.
Let's talk about flat Earth.
Okay, and like,
Rigo agrees the Earth is going around the sun, right?
are you down? Are you a flat earther?
Rigo shook his no.
You're a flat earther, 100%.
Rigo is
okay.
not a flat earther.
I thought we solved that like 600 years ago or something, but whatever.
So go ahead.
Let's say that the question is, what is objectable reality? Like, because we're human beings, right? So I can get lost in my memories, and I can, from my memories, start to invent future memories that haven't even happened yet and start projecting, right? So I can like surf back and forth in my mind through this like imaginary playground that every one of us has.
Yeah, it only exists in
It's
your
not
head.
happening out here.
Yeah, there's
right. So how do I come out of my face out here and be out here with everyone? Okay, that's why we have the scientific method. That's the original reason for religion, in my opinion, right? So here's the thing that I would say that I've not really heard anyone say. I think that what if the golden rule, which is at the heart of every tradition, right, is, and by golden rule, I think most of us look at the golden rule like we would look at a bottle of water. We read the label. I know what I think is in there, but I haven't actually taken the cap off and taken a deep drink, right? So we look at this conversation, and we're trying to get in touch with reality. What if the golden rule is the original scientific method?
Okay, so hold on. Let me just, in my mind, so what you're kind of saying is, so maybe in the past, you looked out for somebody else in that network possibly, and since you did that for somebody, like these Germans happen to show up because you're in that game?
No, I guess what I'm saying is, like, there's how many billion people on the planet? There's 7-8 billion people on the planet?
I don't like math, and I don't appreciate you asking me.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, like, obviously nature is working really hard to make it so that 7 billion people could exist.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So it's just the rhythm of things.
You know what I
there's
mean?
Like a rhythm
Like,
to it.
It's
There's
like
a
life
pulse.
is conspiring to be alive,
Okay.
right? Like, you know.
So this life that's conspiring to keep alive put $250 American into your pocket.
Yeah.
All right.
And I know that it could start to sound real superstitious or real spiritual real quick, and it is. It is. Everything is very
Everything's spiritual.
right?
There's
to me,
no-
the word
there's-
spirit is just the movement behind everything, right? It's like we've got all this like extra layer of cake that we put on everything, right? If I say, you know, there's an artist that I really like, and he has a course called The Spirit of the Pose. He's just talking about the movement of figure drawing, right? The spirit of God, the spirit of the everything and the nothing. What is the movement behind things? And are they conspiring? Thousands and thousands of years have existed. All the human beings that live so that I could sit here today, right? It's all trying to help us along one more day. Now, there's a lot of stuff that is also trying to downpress us, right? Like gravity.
So there's like a dance almost
But
between
it's not,
the two.
But it's not personal. That's the part I'm trying to say is it's not. I
So nobody was looking after you specifically, but because of the nature of the dance, you got 250.
yeah. If you know how to play the game called life, everything's at your fingertips.
And that's actually the name of one of my favorite books,
Okay.
The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Shin.
Okay.
One of the greatest books I've ever read.
Have you read Alan Watts' The Game?
I have not, but
That was one of the first books that blew my mind.
I've watched all of his lectures.
Yeah.
I'm like a Alan Watts junkie.
Alan Watts has a good thing about that where he says, you know, he talks about people from the West going to the East and be careful because you could kind of.
He did that spiritual.
He did it, and then he turned around and
collecting.
warned against it, right?
Yeah, so
And-
he's like, I went over there and I studied it because his parents or something were missionaries, so they'd bring a lot of artifacts back
Yeah.
from China, and he's like, what is this? What are these things? And he became enraptured within their culture, so he went over there and studied it because he
Yeah.
was originally, I think, a priest or like some type
a
of
minister or
a minister in
Okay.
the Christian church, and then he went over there and became, you know, caught up in Taoism, which is my favorite of all the philosophies, which is actually 500 years before Christ. Taoism is there, and it's called the Way. So you got to just let me just drop this here, closing up around closing at the podcast here, called the Way. Jesus shows up 500 years later and talks about the way. So
what if if you really look at what everyone's saying, they're kind of there's like a unfolding. There's a reality that's unfolding, and can I participate in that reality? Now, if I use the scientific method, then I get to put forth a theory, and then we're going to throw rocks at that theory and try and blow it apart. And if it still stands, it's true. Yes?
mm-hmm.
Okay. How long has religion existed?
in different forms, yeah, since
Right?
day one.
Now I can go back to Osiris. I can go back to, and if you kind of start seeing like, oh, all these things might be kind of pointing to a certain kind of a conversation, just like the word love in different languages points to a certain kind of a conversation, right? Now, I know that we're on thin ice at that point because at this point you kind of have people defending their territory. So I get that, and I'm not trying to threaten nobody. I'm just saying if one was to take another step, you might find out there's like the bottom drops out on this thing and it gets real beautiful. And that's not really something that somebody can tell you to go do a certain way. That's kind of like you have to go in there and explore it for yourself.
Learn the dance yourself.
Yours is going to look different than anyone else's. But there is a way to make sure that you're in touch with reality, that, you know, because you have people that will go on that journey and straight up eat themselves and eat other people, and it becomes a tragedy, right?
They'll start a cult another
There you
place.
go,
and like,
right?
now I'm the guru.
So
and
how do you know if you're in touch with reality? Well, that's what the golden rule is. The golden rule says,
service.
let me serve you with no hooks.
So it's Jesus washing the feet of his disciples
With
versus
no hooks.
He's like, no, I'm going to wash your feet. And then the disciples are like, no, we're here to serve you. And he's like, no, you don't understand this. So it's like, see me, like you would say you're practicing Christianity now, you know, to me, that's still, I wrestle with that, right? The Christian thing. That's why it's hard for me to call what we go to a church because, you know, no, I'm honest with that.
No, I think that's hot.
I'm honest with your uncle about it because to me, Christianity is like this. I don't dig it. Like the way once I studied Taoism and Alan Watts and you know Wayne Dyer and like it's like, oh, okay, there's something more genuine here. This is just like a rhythm here.
Have you ever met people that they can only big themselves up by tearing other people down?
There's plenty of
for
those.
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that to me. Like when somebody can only do that, it makes me a little suspect about how much they really believe in themselves.
Okay, so then you're saying my looking at Christianity, bringing it down?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll
because,
take that.
and I'm saying from my own path, I'm not trying to throw stones. I'm just saying, for me, there was a time when to the degree that for me to even say I'm practicing Christianity felt like, yo, get those cuffs away from me.
Okay.
Okay, but so there's a quote, I think it's Hafiz, or where he says, beyond the bounds of right and wrong, there's a pasture. I'll see you there. Okay. When I first heard that coming out of the religious world, it sounded like my freedom from legalism, from the black and the white, right? There's so many strokes of gray in between. So can I maybe go into some freedom and get away from this right and wrong game a little bit and start to live?
Mm-hmm.
What I never imagined is that you would leave the pasture and come back into the pen. And it's the coming and the going in and out of the pasture.
So you're like
pen.
visiting this place and then going
Neither
back
one
and forth.
becomes your residence.
You're
come and go.
You're a Padawan.
And that's
you're
freedom.
a nomad. You're a gypsy.
Because if it's all, I got to just be free, man. I just got to be free. That sounds like a ball and chain to me.
You're a hippie, and then all the hippies at one point in the 70s had to go look for jobs.
You know?
Yeah.
Or just even, you know, there came a point in my life where I went from the legalism of religion and I threw everything out. And to be honest, if I'm by myself, I can leave it all blurry. Like there's a part of me that just leave it blurry.
So you only have to bring context when you're communicating with somebody else, so that you could live in that blurry space.
I guess I have the propensity to do that.
Okay.
Okay. But that's kind of arrogant too, right? Like, what, you don't need nobody in life? You don't need some structure, dude? You don't need to get stuff done? Like, you know, so
because you do have a job.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta pay bills. I got relationships that I'm responsible to. I have a family. I have a community, right? So, if I would be willing to just kind of like allow for the part of this to work, why is it that these things called religions, these traditions, let's call them, these spiritual traditions, have existed for so long? Just because I take it and I play the I'm right, you're wrong game with it, doesn't necessarily mean that's what it's for. Just means that's what I'm doing.
That's just the way where you're at. That's your.
And if you go down in there, what's really in there is this challenge of, Justin, why don't you go serve John? And if you serve John, you might come to a part of yourself that's annoyed, and it has nothing to do with John. You're just annoyed that you have to serve.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get over that part of myself and quote unquote die to myself. That's
which
very
is the
Dharma.
Christian game, the Dharma,
right? Because here's the thing about practicing meditation, that I have a question. Okay, can you become a selfish meditator?
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think when you're saying that, like Buddhists have kind of like their goal is nirvana. And to me, that's the same thing as hearing a Christian say, my goal is heaven. So it's like, okay.
That's why the path of the Bodhisattva is so powerful. Christ was a Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
Is I'm going to, now with this ability to see.
To travel back and
forth. I'm going to go back and until everybody sees, we don't get out.
It's Moses coming back down the mountain to come serve these people. And
because if I'm still saying I see, then I am disconnecting me from all
you're saying
of you. But until I get that I am one bird in a flock of human beings, and that the flock is the real animal, not the individual, go outside and look at the birds fly in the sky and watch that crazy form that could split apart and come back together, the intelligence that is, and they don't run into each other. They do all kind of cool stuff.
I was at the river this morning watching it, and I was like, I was amazed by it. I love it.
Okay, so human beings, when do we get over ourselves?
And become part of the flock.
When do you come in out the cold and participate? And suddenly having a Christian tradition is beautiful. Having a Buddhist tradition is beautiful. Having an Islam tradition is beautiful.
Because then at that point,
being able to say love in my language is beautiful.
it's just like, okay, you're living in an apartment complex and the neighbor over here, you smell this different food. Well, they're cooking Indian food. And then over here, because that's their culture, that's their context. But then over here, you smell some menudo because you got the Mexican
we
side
don't
over
know,
here.
man.
Whatever.
We don't even know what makes water. We call it H2O, but we actually don't know what water is as a species. Not really. We can do cool stuff with it. We can describe aspects of it. But there's like a whole part of just water that we're still clueless about. So what about the rest of the reality that we act like we know about?
And then
Like, let's
people
just
can
chill.
claim, that's when my hard part is like people can claim. And that's the reason I was like the birth of this show was like, are we where yet? Because the quote unquote Christian would always try to get me to heaven. But I'm like, well, so where is heaven to you? Like once I started studying Taoism, to me, it's like heaven's on earth. And then I started to read the scriptures again. And every time Jesus talked about heaven, it's like, no, it's here. It's like a mindset. It's something else. It's like,
I'll say this in kind of closing because I know you're trying to wrap. But so across like a few blocks from my house, there's a little. I live on 4th Avenue. There's a little thrift store that the mission runs. Okay, and when I first moved to Yuma, I went over to the mission. Over to the thrift store because I needed a cane. I had knee surgery. So, and my cousin was over there because my cousin was in the mission at the time. So we go over there and they're having like their grand opening and there's all these people from the mission there, right? So you got people, they got no teeth. You got people that look like they just came like down a crazy 100-mile stretch of road with some meth or some heroin. You just got some like rugged looking human beings in there and they all were glowing. They were all smiling. They were all hugging each other. And I could feel, you call it intuition, you call it God, however you need to say
Holy
it.
Spirit.
I felt it come and say to me at that moment because I could feel this part of me that's just like, man, like this is dumpster. Like we're all, like everything we're selling is dumpster. Everything's broken. And
Your cousin at this point is staying there.
My cousin was we're all at
mission.
the thrift store, yeah, because they're trying to raise money for the mission. They're taking care of people at the mission.
But I'm saying he's one of the persons.
Yeah, he was one of the people there.
Yeah.
And I could just feel my attitude about like this arrogance or something like this is like not polished enough. And in that moment, I just had this question arise in my mind. And it was like, if you can't see it here, where can you see it? And all of a sudden the whole room, it was like a veil lifted on that room. And I felt like I felt honored to be there. And I'm just looking around and you just see all these beautiful people and they're all hugging each other. It doesn't matter if they relapse tomorrow. For this moment, look how gorgeous this spot is, and these people are. And if you can't see it here, you can't see it, bud.
That's and then there it is. The moment you were in the now, you
needed to look
that.
a certain way. You might be cutting yourself out.
And that goes back to Jesus saying, "If you do this for the least of these, you do it for me."
Yeah, man.
And I could see how people could say, "Well, yeah, you do it for Jesus," but I think the other words were like, "No, you do it for we. You do it for we."
And I mean, that's the Christ. Christ is such a G. Like when you look at, I think he was highly scientific. I think Christ was high. I think the way that he played it was so gangster. Because it's really a conversation of, I mean, imagine being a father with a little son and your son is determined to go a path that is going to maybe hurt him. And you're like, okay, I guess if we have to go this route, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to support you. I might have to take care of myself at times, but I'm going to pay too. Because I'm your father.
So you're saying the Father and Jesus at this point? Like,
no,
is that
I'm
God
saying
in the heaven?
that is the story of Christianity.
Oh, okay.
That no matter how weird you would get, no matter how hard you would flex on yourself out of self-loathing or the ones around you, it's a story of redemption and coming along with you. So that's the only way that the whole story makes sense, right? People will look at the Old Testament and the New Testament and say like, oh, there's all these contradictions, this and that. Yeah, because you're not looking at it in the context. It's a context of saying, I'll never leave you. I love you. I'm coming with you. Just like your cells would say, I'll never leave you. Just like your heart will say, I'll never leave you. I'm with you.
It's with you to the end.
It is. It's what it is.
So I think that with you to the end, that's a good place to end. And,
Word. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I would love to have you on again. And we can kind of dive deeper in how you kind of went back into Christianity and how you played that with this backdrop.
I know kind of was all over the place today, like a little bit, but it's a lot. You know what I mean? It's like
You can't sum it
how
up
do you
in a
articulate
podcast.
it all, you know? So
Yeah, so I just appreciate everybody that's listening. It's been getting some good reviews and some good feedback. So thank you everyone for taking time to listen to us. And do you want to plug your website or anything?
yeah, like I'm not on social media super hard. I do professional development now.
You're a speaker, right? Somebody can hire you to speak.
Yeah, it's usually lately it's been more in like a professional development capacity. So like companies or businesses and stuff like that. I don't really do like personal coaching or anything like that. But you know, if you want to have a conversation, whatever, reach out.
What's your website?
Reau.co, reau.co, reau.co.
All right, there you go.
You can email me there.
I appreciate you, Justin. This was a great conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, everybody. And this has been episode 3.